When I opened that Bible and saw those 7 words on the crumpled note, my entire world shifted on its axis. If she learns the truth, end it. That's what the note said. 7 simple words that would transform me from a dutiful wife into a woman I never knew I could become. Good morning, my dear friends. I'm Margaret Patterson, and I'm 78 years old. Today, I'm sharing a story I've carried in my heart for nearly 50 years. Before I begin, please hit that like button, subscribe to Grandma's Stories, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps me continue sharing these stories with all of you. It was the summer of 1970, and I was just 30 years old. I lived in a small town in Georgia where everyone knew everyone else's business, or thought they did. I had been married to Robert for 11 years. He was the head accountant at our town's only credit union, always dressed impeccably, always respected. Everyone called him the most honest man in Millbrook. We had a modest home on Elm Street with a front porch where I grew roses. We had 2 beautiful children, Daniel, who was 9 and loved building things, and Emma, who was 7 and spent hours painting watercolors. I was what you'd call the ideal wife back then. I woke before dawn to prepare breakfast, got the children ready for school, kept an immaculate house, and spent my afternoons doing alterations and dressmaking for ladies in town. My mother had taught me to sew when I was young. She always said, "Margaret, a woman with a skill is never helpless." Little did she know how prophetic those words would be. Our life appeared perfect from the outside. Robert was affectionate when company visited, never forgot birthdays, and provided well for us. But behind closed doors, there were long silences, unexplained absences, and a feeling that something important always escaped my grasp. He traveled frequently, especially the second Tuesday of every month. Credit union business, he'd explain vaguely. I believed him because questioning wasn't welcomed in our home. Once, when I asked for details about a trip, he looked at me coldly and said, "You have a roof over your head and food to eat. That should be enough information." Everything changed on that Sunday afternoon, September 6, 1970. The children were at Robert's mother's house. Robert had left early, saying he needed to review urgent paperwork before a major transaction scheduled for the following week. I was alone, battling a migraine so severe it created flashing lights in my vision. I knew Robert kept prescription painkillers in his study, a room that was strictly off-limits to me and the children. "A man needs space to think," he'd always said. The door was closed but unlocked. That day, the pain overwhelmed my respect for his rules. I entered, searching for the medicine in his desk drawer. A wave of dizziness hit me, and I grabbed the bookshelf to steady myself. Several books tumbled down, including a leather-bound family Bible. The Bible fell open, and a small folded note slipped from between its yellowed pages. My first instinct was to put everything back immediately. Robert would be furious if he knew I'd touched his things, but something made me pick up that paper. The handwriting belonged to Thomas Carr, the credit union manager and Robert's closest friend. I recognized it from Christmas cards. The message was short and chilling. "If she learns the truth, end it." My blood ran cold. The migraine vanished, replaced by pure adrenaline. Who was she? Was it me? What truth warranted such a threat? I carefully returned the note to its place between the pages of Psalms, found the painkillers, and lay on the living room sofa, pretending to rest. But my mind was racing through possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. When Robert returned with the children that evening, I had made my decision. I would not confront him directly. That could be dangerous. Instead, I would pretend nothing happened while uncovering the truth myself. That night, I served dinner as always, listened to the children's stories, laughed at Robert's jokes. On the outside, I was the same Margaret. Inside, something had broken forever. The following days were an exercise in acting. I maintained my routine perfectly while paying attention to every detail. I noticed how Robert locked his desk when leaving, how he quickly hid papers when I entered, how he spoke quietly on the phone when he thought I was busy with the children. A week after finding the note, I made my first concrete discovery. While ironing his shirts for his next trip, I found a receipt in a suit jacket pocket. It was from a jewelry store in Savannah for an engagement ring with a 1-carat diamond. The amount was staggering, nearly 4 times what Robert gave me monthly for household expenses. My wedding band was simple gold. I had never received expensive jewelry. Who was that ring for? In the same pocket, I found a card with an address in Savannah. I memorized it immediately. Over the next few weeks, I created excuses to visit Savannah. I needed special fabric, wanted to see a cousin, had to buy Emma's birthday present. On my 3rd visit, I found the house, a beautiful cottage in an upscale neighborhood, nothing like our modest home. I discreetly asked a neighbor who was gardening about the resident. "Oh, that's young Miss Caroline's place," the woman replied cheerfully. "Such a sweet schoolteacher. She's expecting due any day now. Poor dear's fiancé can only visit on Tuesdays because of work. They say he's finalizing a divorce." second Tuesday of each month, exactly when Robert traveled. The divorce would be from me, apparently, though I was very much still married and living under his roof. I returned home with a heavy heart but growing determination. Through careful conversation with Martha, the credit union's new secretary who I befriended at church, I learned about a major transaction scheduled for month's end. "We're all so busy with this large transfer," she mentioned innocently. "Mr. Patterson and Mr. Carr have been working late. I've never seen so much money in one place." The pieces began fitting together. Robert and Thomas were planning to steal from the transfer. The note, the ring, the house in Savannah, the pregnant woman, all part of a plan to disappear with stolen money and start fresh, leaving me and the children with nothing. Possibly worse than nothing if I discovered their scheme too soon. I remembered a strange key I'd found months earlier in Robert's shaving kit. When I'd asked about it, he'd dismissed it as an old office key. Now it took on new meaning. I searched until I found it hidden in a hollowed-out book on his shelf. The key opened a metal box at the bottom of our bedroom closet. Inside, I found the evidence. Boat tickets to Brazil in Robert's name and Caroline Mitchell, fake identity documents, and love letters signed by Caroline with references to our baby and our new life together. The most recent letter, dated just 2 weeks prior, made my hands shake. "My darling, only 2 weeks until we're together forever. Everything is arranged as planned. The nursery is ready. I can't wait to start our real family. Be careful with the final details." As Thomas says, if she discovers anything before time, you know what must be done. But soon we'll have everything we dreamed of. All my love, Caroline. Tears streamed down my face as I read. 11 years of marriage, 2 children, countless dinners served, clothes washed, nights spent caring for sick babies, all to be discarded. And if I discovered their plan, I would be ended. Sitting on the bedroom floor with evidence of betrayal in my hands, I made a life-changing decision. I would not be a victim. I would use everything I'd discovered to protect my children and myself. I carefully returned everything to its place, locked the box, and hid the key exactly where I'd found it. Nothing would reveal my knowledge. I had 2 weeks until the theft, 2 weeks to create my own plan. First, I needed my own money. Women didn't have independent bank accounts back then, but my wealthiest client, Mrs. Dorothy Williams, helped me open one in Savannah, keeping it secret from Robert and Thomas. I deposited all my sewing savings from the past 6 years. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Second, I needed proof. Using a small camera I'd purchased in Savannah, I secretly photographed documents from Robert's study, always leaving everything exactly as I found it. Each new document revealed more about the scheme. They'd been embezzling small amounts for 3 years using deceased clients' accounts. The major transfer would be their final heist, diverting $750,000 meant for a new textile factory. Third, I needed someone trustworthy. The local authorities all socialized with Robert and Thomas, but I remembered Inspector Harrison, a state investigator who came periodically to audit the credit union. Robert always complained about him, calling him insufferably honest. Through Martha, I learned he'd be in the area the following week, staying at the Millbrook Inn. I carefully prepared an envelope with copied documents, photographs, and a letter explaining everything. The challenge was delivering it without suspicion. I organized a playdate for Emma with the innkeeper's daughter, offering to drop Emma off after school. While there, I complimented Mrs. Foster's handbag, asking to borrow it to coordinate with a dress I was making. When I returned it later, the envelope was hidden in the inner lining with a note asking her to give it to Inspector Harrison without mentioning my name. Fourth, I prepared for our future. I contacted my childhood friend Louise, who ran a small tailoring shop in Atlanta. Without revealing everything, I explained my marriage was ending and I'd need work soon. "Come anytime, Margaret," she said without hesitation. "I need a partner with your talent. There's a small apartment above the shop where you can stay." Meanwhile, I continued my normal life, preparing Robert's favorite meals, caring for the children, doing my sewing. At night, while everyone slept, I packed a small emergency suitcase and mentally calculated travel time to Atlanta if we needed to flee. The week before the transfer, I received a discreet signal my plan was working. Martha stopped by, pretending to order a dress. "Inspector Harrison requested extra documentation today," she whispered while I measured her. "Mr. Carr and your husband looked pale as ghosts." My heart pounded. The inspector had my evidence and was investigating, but the danger had increased. If Robert suspected me, he might act before his planned escape. That night at dinner, I noticed Robert watching me intently as I served soup. His gaze alternated between me and the children, as if seeing us for the last time. "Margaret," he said suddenly, "I may need to reschedule our Sunday outing with the children. Urgent matters to handle." I swallowed hard. The outing was scheduled for the day after the transfer, when he'd planned to disappear. "Of course, dear," I replied naturally. "The children will understand." After putting Daniel and Emma to bed, I found Robert in his study, hunched over papers. The door was ajar, unusual for him. "Robert," I called softly, "I need money for fabric tomorrow. Mrs. Williams wants a new dress." He looked up, and for an instant I saw something I'd never noticed before: fear. "Of course," he said, taking bills from his wallet, "more than I'd requested, much more. Buy something nice for yourself, too." I thanked him and left, heart racing. He'd never been generous without reason. Was it a guilt offering or a farewell gesture? That night, while Robert finally slept, I silently checked on the children. I adjusted Daniel's blanket, smoothed Emma's hair, and made a silent promise. Whatever happened tomorrow, they would have a life built on truth, not lies. Dawn arrived. The day of the transfer came with clear skies. Robert seemed distracted, constantly checking his watch. "I'll be late tonight," he announced, avoiding my eyes. "Don't wait dinner for me." "Any problems at the credit union?" I asked innocently, pouring more coffee. He hesitated. "No, just paperwork." Before leaving, he did something rare. He kissed my cheek and hugged the children longer than usual. Daniel noticed the oddness but said nothing. After Robert left, I prepared for any scenario. I separated important documents, packed emergency clothes, hid money in different places around the house. The day dragged endlessly. In the afternoon, Martha quickly stopped by under the pretext of trying on her dress. "There are state police at the credit union," she whispered. "They came with the transfer money. Inspector Harrison is with them. Mr. Carr is locked in his office with 3 men in suits. Your husband tried to leave, but they asked him to stay." I thanked her with a nod, hands trembling. It was happening. My plan was working. I collected the children from school and took them to my sister's house, claiming I needed to finish urgent sewing without interruptions. If anything went wrong, at least they'd be safe. I returned home and waited, the sun set, painting the sky orange and crimson. Hours passed with no news. At 8 p.m., I heard sirens, 3 police cars speeding toward town center where the credit union stood. 30 minutes later, frantic knocking startled me. I opened the door with trembling hands. It was my sister, pale and breathless. "Margaret, have you heard? Robert and Thomas were arrested. They're saying they tried to steal the transfer money. The whole town is in the square." I pretended shock, grabbing the doorframe for support. "It can't be, there must be a mistake." "There's no mistake," she replied, entering and closing the door. "Inspector Harrison received an anonymous tip with evidence, documents, photographs, everything. They've been stealing for years, and there's more." She hesitated, looking at me with pity and embarrassment. "They found tickets to Brazil in Robert's name and a woman named Caroline. She's pregnant in Savannah." I let myself fall into a chair, covering my face. I didn't need to fake the pain. It was real, even though I'd known the whole story. One thing was discovering betrayal in secret. Another was seeing it exposed to the entire town. That night marked the end of the Margaret I had been, the obedient wife, the invisible woman. When morning came, I would forge a new version of myself. The news spread like wildfire. Our small town had never experienced such scandal. The credit union closed for investigation. Journalists arrived from Atlanta and beyond. I became overnight the betrayed wife of the criminal. Stares followed me everywhere, some pitying, others curious, as if searching for signs of complicity or extreme ignorance. The morning after the arrest, I woke at my sister's house. The children were still sleeping. I looked out the window and saw neighbors gathering on the sidewalk, gossiping and pointing. "You don't need to face this now," my sister said, bringing coffee. "Stay here until things calm down." But I knew hiding would only feed more gossip. I bathed, wore one of my best dresses, navy blue with white details I'd sewn myself, and carefully styled my hair. "I'm going to the market," I announced. "The children need fresh milk when they wake." My sister looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "In the middle of this chaos, I need to show my face. If I hide, they'll say I'm ashamed or that I knew everything." Walking to the market that morning was like crossing a minefield. I felt every stare, heard whispers that ceased when I approached. At the butcher's, silence fell when I entered. It was Mrs. Foster, the innkeeper, who broke the ice. "Mrs. Patterson, good to see you. I was just saying how brave you're being. Do you need help with the children?" I thanked her with a polite smile, bought what I needed, and left with my head high. Inside, I trembled, but I'd never let them see that. 3 days later, I gave my statement to Inspector Harrison in Savannah. They questioned me for hours, confirming I wasn't involved in the scheme. I told them about discovering the note, my investigations, finding out about Caroline, but I omitted that I'd been the anonymous source of evidence. Before leaving, Inspector Harrison called me aside privately. "Mrs. Patterson, we received anonymous evidence 2 weeks ago. Documents, photographs, concrete proof. It was you, wasn't it?" I held his gaze without confirming or denying. "Whoever it was," he continued, "saved not only the transfer money, but possibly prevented harm to innocent people, including perhaps yourself." He handed me his card. "If you need anything, call me." "You showed extraordinary courage." Robert was sentenced to 10 years. Thomas received 12 for masterminding the scheme. I received notice to vacate our house within 30 days. The credit union was reclaiming it. I had to explain to Daniel and Emma in the gentlest way possible that their father had done something wrong and would be away for a long time. "Doesn't he love us anymore?" Emma asked, tears streaming. "What happened has nothing to do with his love for you," I replied, hugging her. "Sometimes adults make terrible mistakes and must face consequences, but Mommy is here and always will be." As I prepared our move to Atlanta, I received an unexpected letter from Caroline. In delicate handwriting, she apologized for the pain caused, swearing she didn't know about the criminal plan or that we'd be abandoned without resources. "He told me your marriage had ended years ago," she wrote. "I believed because I wanted to believe. Now I carry a child whose father is in prison and an uncertain future ahead. I was also deceived." I folded the letter carefully. I didn't respond, but those words planted a seed that would bloom years later. Moving day came. I dressed the children in their best clothes, loaded our few bags into a taxi, and took one last look at the house where I'd lived for 11 years. I felt no sadness, just relief. Those walls held more lies than truth. Louise met us at the Atlanta bus station with a warm smile. "Welcome to your new life," she said simply. The small apartment above her shop was tiny, one bedroom for all three of us, a kitchenette shared bathroom. But it had windows with natural light, and Louise had placed fresh flowers in a vase. That first night after the children finally slept, I sat by the window looking at Atlanta's night sky, so different from Millbrook, with fewer visible stars and more city lights. Everything was strange, yet I felt unexpected peace. There, under that unfamiliar sky, I made a vow: I would transform our tragedy into triumph. I wouldn't be just the thief's ex-wife or the abandoned woman. I would be Margaret, seamstress, mother, independent woman, someone who found a threatening note and used it as a catalyst for liberation rather than destruction. The first months were brutally hard. I worked at Louise's shop during the day, doing alterations and simple sewing. At night, when the children slept, I created my own designs, dreaming of having my own clientele. Money was counted carefully. Many nights after the children went to bed, I cried silently from exhaustion and worry. But when the sun rose, I washed my face and faced another day. Robert's sentencing appeared in newspapers. I showed Daniel and Emma not to feed anger, but so they'd understand that actions have consequences. "Can we visit him?" Daniel asked. "Whenever you want," I replied. "He made serious mistakes, but he's still your father." The first prison visit was painful. Seeing Robert in uniform, thin and worn, made Emma cry throughout. Daniel remained silent, observing his father as if trying to reconcile this image with his memories. "Are you all right?" Robert asked, avoiding my gaze. "We're starting over," I replied simply. "The children miss you." Gradually, our life took shape in Atlanta. Louise taught me advanced techniques, introduced me to potential clients, shared her business knowledge. After 6 months, I had my own small clientele. With saved money and a small loan from Mrs. Williams, we rented a modest apartment near the children's school, 2 bedrooms, a tiny living room, a kitchen barely big enough for 3. But it was ours. We bought secondhand furniture, I sewed colorful curtains, and the children painted their shared bedroom walls. We transformed that rented space into a home. Sometimes I thought about Caroline and the baby, Robert's child, half-sibling to Daniel and Emma. Had they stayed in Savannah facing stigma, returned to her family, would that child ever know about my children? Life continued with small daily victories. Emma learned to read voraciously. Daniel excelled in mathematics, dreaming of becoming an engineer. My reputation as a seamstress grew. It was 1972. I was 32 years old, and for the first time I could remember, I felt in control of my destiny. It wasn't easy or wealthy, but it was authentic. It was mine. And then destiny decided to bring another twist. It was a rainy Wednesday when the past knocked on my door. Literally. I was finishing a graduation dress when Daniel called hesitantly, "Mom, there's a lady here with a baby." I cleaned my hands and went to the door. There, soaked by rain and visibly nervous, was Caroline. In her arms, a baby about 1 year old slept peacefully. Time froze. I studied her face, thinner than in photos, with deep circles under her eyes. But her gaze held the same determination I recognized from her letter. "I'm sorry to appear like this," she said softly. I didn't know where else to go. For an instant, all my repressed feelings threatened to overflow: anger, hurt, indignation. How dare she appear at my door with the child from the betrayal that destroyed my family? But then I looked at the sleeping baby with chubby cheeks and long lashes, an innocent child who didn't ask to be born into this mess. "Come in," I said, opening the door wider. "You're soaked." While Daniel fetched towels and Emma heated water for tea, Caroline sat on the sofa's edge, still clutching her son. "Is it a boy?" I asked. "Yes, Benjamin. He's 11 months old." After the children left us alone, Caroline's story poured out. She'd lost everything, evicted from the Savannah house, expelled by her father who couldn't bear having a bastard grandson. She'd tried finding teaching positions, but doors closed when her story was discovered. Robert promised to come for us when released, she said, but last week I received this. She showed me a brief, cold letter in Robert's handwriting. Caroline's circumstances have changed. When I'm released, I'll need to start from nothing. I can't support you and the boy as promised. It's better we go separate ways. I wasn't surprised. It was the same pattern: use people, discard them when convenient. I heard you opened a shop, that you're rebuilding your life, Caroline continued, tears escaping. I'm not asking for charity, I'm asking for work. I can clean, help with clients, anything. I just need a chance to care for my son. I looked at this desperate young woman and the sleeping baby, half-brother to my children, whether I wanted it or not. What right did I have to judge Caroline? She'd been deceived too, discarded when inconvenient. The difference was I'd discovered the truth in time to prepare. She was caught unprepared with a baby and broken promises. Do you have sewing experience? I asked. She shook her head. No, but I learned quickly. I was a teacher. I understand details and organization. I took a deep breath, knowing my decision would change several lives. I have a small storage room in back, I said. Not much, but space for a mattress and crib. For work, I need someone to handle clients and bookkeeping while I sew. The salary won't be much at first, but it includes the room and meals. Her eyes widened with disbelief and relief. You would accept me after everything? I'm not doing this for you, I replied honestly. I'm doing it for your son, who's brother to my children, and maybe a little for myself. I've carried anger too long. It's time to let go. That night, after Caroline and Benjamin were settled in the makeshift room, I sat with Daniel and Emma to explain. The baby who came today is your brother, I said simply. Your father's son with another person. He and his mother need help, and we're going to help them. Daniel, always perceptive, frowned. Is she the woman Dad left us for? I was impressed by his insight. Yes, but she was also deceived like us. And the baby isn't to blame for anything. Emma, with her 8-year-old simplicity, shrugged. Can I play with him when he's bigger? Of course, sweetheart, he's your brother. The adjustment wasn't easy. Initially, Caroline could barely meet my eyes, caught between shame and gratitude. The children oscillated between curiosity and confusion. Neighbors gossiped when they saw us together. The betrayed wife and the mistress under one roof, scandal material in any era. But gradually, routine established itself. Caroline had natural talent for organization. Within days, she reorganized the shop, created a client scheduling system, and handled all administrative tasks I'd neglected. With her managing these aspects, I could focus exclusively on creating designs, increasing our productivity. The children adapted faster than I imagined. Emma adopted big sister duties enthusiastically, enchanted with the baby who smiled at her. Daniel, though more reserved, frequently helped Caroline with small tasks, especially when he sensed she was overwhelmed. At night, after children slept, sometimes we talked in the small kitchen, two women united by the same man who betrayed them, trying to understand how to move forward. How did you discover? She asked one evening while mending Benjamin's overalls. About us, about the plan. I told her about the note in the Bible, my investigations, gathering evidence. She listened silently, hands frozen over fabric. You sent the evidence to the inspector, she concluded, not accusation but recognition. That's why he was arrested before fleeing. I did what I needed to protect my children and myself, she nodded slowly. I would have done the same if I'd known. On another night when Benjamin had fever and we took turns monitoring him, she confessed how she'd met Robert. It was my first year teaching. He came to school for a financial literacy lecture. He was so charming, so attentive, said he was separated, only maintaining appearances in Millbrook because of his position. I believed every word. It wasn't hard to understand her deception. I'd lived 10 years with Robert, never suspecting his duplicity until I found that note. Months passed and something unexpected happened. We began functioning as an unconventional family. We shared responsibilities, meals, small joys, daily concerns. Caroline revealed herself an excellent storyteller, enchanting all 3 children before bed. I taught her sewing secrets, surprised by her ability to learn complex techniques. The shop prospered. With Caroline organizing administration, I could accept more orders, including wedding dresses that paid better. By late 1973, we moved to larger space, an apartment with 3 bedrooms and a living room we transformed into a proper studio. It was then I received an unexpected visit. I was alone finishing a dress when our receptionist entered hesitantly. Mrs. Patterson, there's a man named Thomas Carr wanting to speak with you. Thomas, the credit union manager, Robert's partner in the scheme, author of that threatening note that changed my life. Send him up, I decided after hesitating. The man who entered was unrecognizable. The Thomas I knew was always elegant in well-cut suits with perfect hair. This man was thin, pale, with prematurely gray hair and deep circles. "Thank you for seeing me," he said, refusing offered coffee. "I was released 3 days ago, reduced sentence for good behavior." I remained silent, waiting for explanation. "I came to ask forgiveness," he continued, looking at his hands. "I know I don't deserve it. The note was Robert's idea. He feared you'd discover about Caroline about the money. He said it was just precaution, would never be used." I believed or wanted to believe. "Why tell me this now?" I asked, keeping distance. "Because I spent 3 years in prison thinking about the man I became, what we almost did to you and your children. Robert feels no remorse. He blames everyone but himself, but I can't live with this weight anymore." I studied his face for manipulation signs, but saw only exhaustion and genuine shame. "What will you do now?" "Return to my hometown down south. My brother has a small business. He's giving me a chance. I know I can never fully compensate for the harm caused, but I want to try living honestly from now on." As he stood to leave, he said something surprising. "Your report saved many lives, you know, not just yours. If we'd succeeded stealing that money, many families would have lost savings. Jobs would have been destroyed when the factory couldn't expand. Your courage made more difference than you imagine." After he left, I stood at the window watching the busy street below. Thomas's visit stirred buried memories, but also brought strange closure. The man who'd written those threatening words was repentant, seeking redemption. 1974 brought new challenges and opportunities. Daniel, now 13, excelled increasingly at school, especially in sciences and mathematics. Emma, at 11, revealed artistic talent. Her illustrations began inspiring some of my designs. Benjamin, almost 3, was a happy, curious child who called me Aunt Maggie. That year, an influential client offered partnership in a new venture, a boutique downtown focused on custom clothing for special occasions. "You have the talent, I have the capital and connections," she explained. "We can transform your home studio into a real business." The opportunity was tempting but frightening: larger investment, more responsibilities, more visibility. "I need to discuss this with my partner," I replied, using the term we'd adopted for Caroline to strangers. That night, after children slept, I presented the proposal at our small kitchen table. "It's risky," Caroline pondered cautiously, "but also the chance we've been waiting for. If it succeeds, we can give the children better education, maybe even buy a house someday." We discussed until late, weighing pros and cons, calculating on paper scraps, dreaming a little too. We decided to accept. Over the next 2 years, our boutique flourished beyond our most optimistic expectations. We went from that small downtown space to an elegant storefront in a prestigious district. In 1976, one of my wedding dresses was photographed for a women's magazine. Caroline proved not only an excellent administrator, but also a business visionary. It was her idea to expand into ready-to-wear dresses, more accessible than custom but maintaining quality that characterized us. Our unusual partnership, betrayed wife and former mistress, became a discreet topic in social circles. Some disapproved, finding the arrangement scandalous. Others admired our ability to overcome the past. Most were too busy with their own dramas to care about ours. The children grew healthy, each with distinct personality. Daniel was serious and studious, fascinated by engineering. Emma showed artistic temperament, always with sketchbook under her arm. Benjamin was happy and sociable, adored by everyone at the studio. Our unconventional family now lived in a spacious house with a garden where children could play and a studio where I created designs needing silence. Life finally seemed stabilized, a boat finding calm waters after violent storm. Until one afternoon in June 1977, the past visited again. I was adjusting a graduation dress when our receptionist entered hesitantly. "Mrs. Patterson, there's a man here saying he's Robert Patterson." The pin I held slipped through my fingers. "Robert, after 7 years in prison, he was free. Tell him I'm busy," I replied automatically, self-preservation reflex. But then, looking at my client in the mirror, a young woman about to graduate, her whole life ahead, I thought about the woman I'd become. I was no longer that insecure wife intimidated by my husband's mere presence. I was a businesswoman, a mother, a woman who'd rebuilt her life from ashes. "No, ask him to wait in reception. I'll finish in 15 minutes." I completed the adjustment with hands refusing to tremble, scheduled the final fitting, and took deep breath before walking to reception. Robert sat rigidly in an elegant armchair, looking out of place in that feminine, sophisticated environment. Prison years had aged him, completely whitened his once dark hair. He wore a simple suit, clean but outdated. Our gazes met, and for an instant I was transported back to that kitchen in 1970, preparing breakfast for a man planning to abandon me. "Margaret," he said, standing. "Robert," I replied with surprising calmness. "Let's talk in my office." I guided him through the studio, aware of curious glances from seamstresses and assistants. My office reflected who I'd become: organized, elegant without ostentation, with Emma's drawings framed on walls. "You've built something impressive here," he commented, observing the environment. "What do you want, Robert?" I asked directly, indicating he should sit while I took my place behind the desk. The power dynamic between us was clearly different now. "To see my children," he replied, looking at a photo on my desk showing Daniel and Emma at their school graduation. "I was released last week. I'm living in a boarding house nearby. Daniel is 16 now, Emma 14. They're not the children you left behind." "I know," he said, rubbing his hands nervously. "I received the letters and photos you sent. Thank you for maintaining connection even after everything." I nodded silently. Despite everything, I'd kept my promise to keep children connected to their father. "I also want to see Benjamin," he added, surprising me. "Benjamin, you rejected your own son. Caroline showed me your letter." Shame colored his aged face. "I was desperate, Margaret. I thought it would be easier for everyone if I disappeared from your lives. But in prison, I had too much time to think, to regret." I studied his face, looking for signs of the old Robert, the manipulator, the charming liar. I found only a worn man carrying the weight of his choices. "I can't decide for Caroline about Benjamin," I finally replied. "As for Daniel and Emma, they're almost adults. The choice should be theirs." "That's fair," he agreed. When he left, I promised to inform the children about his return and let them decide if they wanted to meet him. That night, I gathered Daniel, Emma, and Caroline in the living room. Benjamin was already asleep. "Your father has been released," I announced without sugarcoating. "He came to the studio today, wants to see you." Daniel, almost a man now, crossed his arms defensively. "I have nothing to say to him." Emma, always more emotional, bit her lip, eyes welling. "Did he ask about me specifically?" "He asked about both of you. The decision is yours." "I won't force anything." Caroline remained silent, but I noticed her hands clenching nervously. "He wants to see Benjamin too," I added, looking at Caroline. Her eyes widened. "After the letter he sent, after abandoning us." "Why now?" "He says he regrets it, that he had time to think in prison." Heavy silence fell, each absorbed in thoughts and memories. "I'll meet him," Emma finally decided. "Not for him, but for me. I need to understand some things." Michael shook his head. "I'm not ready, maybe never will be." Caroline took deep breath. "If he really wants to know his son, I can't deny that to Benjamin. But on my terms, with clear boundaries." In following weeks, Robert became peripheral presence in our lives. He'd appear Sundays to take Emma to lunch or Benjamin to the park. Daniel remained steadfast in refusal. As for me, I maintained polite distance. There was no more anger or fear, just clarity that our paths had definitively separated 7 years before when I found that note. Life continued. Our boutique continued prospering. In 1979, I was invited to present a small collection at an early version of what would become Atlanta Fashion Week. Daniel graduated with honors and was accepted to Georgia Tech, realizing his engineering dream. Emma, following her artistic talent, entered design school to eventually work alongside me. Benjamin, growing up surrounded by creativity and entrepreneurship, showed business talents even young. Robert found work as accountant in a small firm, living modestly in a rented apartment. The luxurious life he'd known was definitely past. At important events for children, graduations, presentations, competitions, we maintained cordial distance, silently recognizing that despite everything, we were united by the three young people we'd helped raise. It was in 1981, almost 11 years after discovering that fateful note, that the cycle finally completed. I was in my studio working on final details of a wedding dress when my assistant interrupted. "Mrs. Patterson, there's a couple here wanting to speak with you about an exclusive wedding dress." I adjusted my hair, now with gray strands I wore with pride, and went to reception. There, holding hands, were Thomas Carr and a woman approximately his age with a shy smile. "Thomas," I greeted, surprised. "Mrs. Patterson," he replied, visibly nervous. "This is Helen, my fiancée. We're getting married next month, simple ceremony. When looking for someone to make her dress, your name appeared in all recommendations." I didn't know if I'd be welcome, but Helen squeezed his hand encouragingly. "He told me about his past, about his connection with you. I know it's asking a lot, but I'd be honored if you'd consider creating my dress." I looked at this man who'd once written, "If she learns the truth, end it," and his fiancée who accepted him despite his dark past. The irony wasn't lost on me. The man who'd participated in a plan that almost destroyed my life now came seeking help to celebrate his love. 11 years ago, I would have refused immediately, moved by hurt and justified resentments. But the woman I was now understood something about second chances, new beginnings, transforming tragedies into triumphs. "Come with me, Helen," I said, guiding her to the fitting studio. "Let's discuss what you imagine for your big day." In months and years that followed, our story continued unfolding in directions I could never have predicted. Daniel graduated as engineer and eventually opened his own firm. Emma became my creative partner, bringing fresh air to traditional creations. Benjamin, with support from both Caroline and Robert, went into business school, eventually taking over management of the business Caroline and I built. Caroline and I never separated, neither as partners nor as family. That temporary situation transformed into lifelong partnership based on mutual respect, deep understanding, and shared love for the three children we raised together. Robert passed away in 1996 from sudden heart attack. At the funeral, we were all there: Daniel, Emma, Benjamin, me, Caroline, not for lost romantic love, but out of respect for the man who, despite enormous mistakes, had connected us in ways none could have imagined. Today, at 78 years old, I look back and see how a simple note hidden in a Bible completely altered my existence's course. What should have been my death sentence became, ironically, the catalyst for a full and authentic life. I now have 7 wonderful grandchildren. The boutique transformed into a regionally respected brand, though I officially retired years ago, leaving business in capable hands of Emma and Benjamin. Caroline and I still live together, 2 elderly ladies who shared so much they became practically sisters. Sometimes when we're gathered for Sunday lunch, my children, grandchildren, Caroline, I think about that frightened 30-year-old woman trembling as she read a threatening note with no idea how she'd face the future. I wish I could go back and whisper in her ear, "Courage, Margaret. What seems like the end of everything is just the beginning of something extraordinary. The storm is brutal, but what you'll build after will be stronger and more beautiful than you ever imagined." That's what I'd like to leave with you today, my dear friends. Whatever storm you're facing, know it can be the beginning of something new, not the end of everything. Sometimes we need something to break completely so we can build something much more beautiful in its place. Thank you for accompanying me on this journey of memories. If this story touched your heart, leave a like, share it with someone who needs to hear a message of hope, and subscribe to Grandma's Stories for more tales of overcoming. Tell me in the comments if a great difficulty ever transformed into a blessing in your life. A loving hug from this grandma who learned that it's not events that define our lives, but how we choose to respond to them. Until next time, my dears.